Welcome students of Form 3B. We're talking about Caribbean culture, talking about the transformation of culture and the spread of culture. We're now going to talk about the timeline of Caribbean ethnic groups and specific timeline of Curaçao ethnic groups. And we'll begin with the first one, that is the Cagatio. Cagatio inhabited Curaçao starting from 900 BC. So, around 900 BC, the Cagatio arrived on our island. That means more than almost 3,000 years ago. BC means before Christ. They came from the north of Venezuela and they had a network together, those from the mainland and island. As on Aruba, also Cagatio lived, and perhaps even on Bonaire, and combined with the Cagatio living on the Venezuela mainland, they had a network together. They were of the same ethnic origin. Some part of the language still exists in Papiamentu, for instance, Wara Wara, Divi Divi, a lot of sounds that are like doubled, you can still find in Papiamentu language. Yes, this was the first group that migrated to Curaçao. Yes, so 900 BC, north of current Venezuela. They were a part of a network, those of the mainland and the island, and some part of the language still exists in Papiamentu, for instance, Wara Wara and Divi Divi, and a lot of other words that have their origin in the language of the Cagatio. So that's the timeline. We begin with the Cagatio, 900 BC. Step 2, those are the Spanish. In 1499, the Spanish, led by Alonso de Ojeda, came to the island. 2,000 Cagatio were shipped off to Cuba. They had to work in the copper mines. A few hundred of them remained on the island of Curaçao. So not only the Spanish came to the island, 2,000 Cagatio were also forced to leave the island and go work on the island of Hispaniola. Nowadays, Hispaniola is Haiti and the Dominican Republic combined in one island. Yes, find a map and look where Hispaniola is, if you don't know it already. So again, the first colonization was in 1499, and 2,000 Cagatio were shipped off, and a few hundred Cagatio remain on our island. 3, so we have the Cagatio, we have the Spanish. 3, we have the Dutch. And the Dutch were the second colonization. The first was the Spanish, and the second were the Dutch. They were led by the WIC, the West Indische Compagnie, and it became a possession, a propriedad by a WIC. And from 1659, Jewish families came to start plantations and trade on our island. Yes, so there was also a second colonization in 1634. The WIC, the island became a possession, un propriedad para a WIC, para a West Indies Company. Some years later, in 1659, some Jewish families came to the island in the 17th century to start plantations and to do some negotiation on our island, to trade some on our island. So we have the Cagatio, yes. We have the Cagatio, we have the Spanish, yes. The first colonization was by the Spanish. 2,000 Cagatio were shipped off to Hispaniola, a few hundred remain on Curaçao. After the Spanish, we have the Dutch, and we see of the Dutch that in 1643 they came to our island under the leadership of Johan van Walbeek and Jan Otse, if you remember from Fundashi. It became a possession of the WIC, a Dutch company, un propriedad, and from 1659 some Jewish families came to our island to start some plantations and to comienza un negocio, to trade on our island, like you can see behind me actually on this sheet. Then we continue with our timeline. We talked about the Caguetillo, we talked about the Spanish, we talked about the Dutch. Yes. And the fourth group are multiple ones, the Lebanese, the Madeirans, Madeira, like some of you have taught me, the Madeirans, and the Surinamese. And why did they came to our island? Not because of the sugar plantation work that was on other islands in the Caribbean. We didn't have a lot of sugar plantations, so we didn't need a lot of replacements for that work after the abolition of slavery. But one important moment for us is industrialization, starting in the important year of 1917. Very important year for the island of Curaçao. So in 1917, the first refinery was built by the Shell, and they don't find enough skilled personnel, so that's why they employ people from the Caribbean, South America, and the Middle East, and the population slowly starts to grow from 30,000, what isn't much, to more than 100,000 people. And nowadays on our island live 155,000 people. That's a lot. And one of the main reasons for the high amount of people on our island is the existence of the arrival of the oil refinery in 1917, which is a very important year, a very important moment for Curaçao. And nowadays we have way more than 100,000 people. So the Lebanese, the Madeirans, and the Surinamese came to our island in this year. And after that, more and more kept coming until we have the Curaçao that we have today. So again, repeat it. In 1917, an oil refinery is built. They don't find enough skilled personnel locally, and the company starts to employ people from the Caribbean, South America, and the Middle East, and the population starts to grow from 30,000 to more than 100,000 people until it is what it is today, 155,000 people. 155,000 people, yeah, that we have today. So we see in 1917, oil refineries built, very important year. They don't find enough skilled personnel. That's why the Shell starts to employ people from the Caribbean, South America, and even the Middle East. And the population starts to grow, but very slowly, tranquil, un par un, from 30,000 people to more than 100,000 people hour en dia. And that's a lot. And this all happens under the influence of heavy industrialization of the island. That means factories, that means huge machines, that means automized production with again medicine. So industrialization, and the first part of that was the arrival of the oil refinery in the very important year of 1917. So we have the Caguetillo, we have the Spanish, we have the Dutch, we have the Lebanese, we have the Madeirans, we have the Surinamese under the influence of industrialization, starting in 1917. After the Surinamese and the Madeirans and which one? Lebanese, we have the last moment that is important, and it is the arrival of some refugees in the 20s of the 20th century. Refugees means you flee from your home country, not because you want it, but because you have to. You're forced to flee from your home country and you have no choice. Voting no score. And this all started in 1926 because Jews from Eastern Europe came to Curaçao, also called Ashkenazi Jews, and they suffered from persecution and anti-Semitism, hatred towards, in this case, Jewish people, which was growing in the 20s and the 30s under the leadership of parties like those of Adolf Hitler, but there are lots of anti-Semitic parties besides those of Adolf Hitler in the 20s and the 30s. A lot of the French, the German people, the Polish people, the Dutch people, the Russian people, a lot of people were anti-Semitic. Meanwhile, the workers and employees of Shell are located each in specific neighborhoods, each according to their ethnicity. For instance, in Suffisant, people from Suriname were placed, and in places like Emmastadt, the Dutch employees were located. And I've just recently learned, for instance, that in Damakor, later on, the Dutch KLM employees were located. So in different barrios, in different neighborhoods, people from different parts of the world, different ethnicities, were located and separated. This is a very important element. So that Ashkenazi Jews and ethnic groups placed in different neighborhoods. So refugees, 1926, very important year for the Ashkenazi Jews. They came here because of anti-Semitism in Eastern Europe, and also the workers and employees of the Shell are located in different neighborhoods according to their ethnicity, and not only located, but also separated, you could say. 1926, Jews from Eastern Europe, Ashkenazi Jews, because of anti-Semitism. Meanwhile, mientras, the workers and employees of Shell are located, each in specific neighborhoods of Curacao according to their ethnicity. Now, you might have noticed that in the beginning and also during class, I forgot the main group of Curacao, and that was pretty stupid of me, but perhaps because it's so obvious, there's one group still missing in all of these, and that is the group of the Africans, the Afro-Curaçaoans. So starting in 1684, but probably some 20 or even 30 years earlier, the director, the leader of the islands, mainly of Curacao, started to bring Africans to Curacao and Aruba and Bonaire and Sint Maarten and Saba and Statia to work on the plantations, but those weren't big numbers. Big numbers of Africans start to arrive in the year 1648 because the director of the island, Peter Stuyvesant, he had the idea, let's make Curacao and the other islands profitable. Statia, for instance, was also a port of distribution of slaves, African slaves, to other parts of the world. So Curacao became a slave depot, and from Curacao they were transported to South America, to North America, and the rest of the Caribbean. And from 1648, but probably even earlier, Africans coming from Western Africa, for instance from Elmina, were brought to Curacao. Some of them worked for the WIC or local shons, local owners of plantations, but most of them went to Brazil, went to Venezuela, went to Jamaica, went to North America, and were distributed all around the New World. So starting 1648 and earlier, Africans started to arrive in the Caribbean and are now the main population, the main ethnic group on the island of Curacao. Yeah, so we've seen a lot of groups, different groups that arrived on Curacao starting some 3,000 years ago. Yeah, and they all are a part of what is now Curacao. They all have a history, but these are now the ingredients, the ethnic groups of which Curacao consists. This still influences our life on the island today. If you want to subscribe, let the bell be rung below. If you have questions or improvements or some feedback, please ring the bell below. and I hope to see you during my class. And from this chair, I wish you a very nice Bon Pascu. Enjoy your break, sleep enough, go do stuff for friends, and I hope to see you after break. And if you watch this video after break, I wish you a nice afternoon, morning, or evening, and I hope to see you next during my social studies classes.